Newcastle 2, Tottenham 1. Welcome in to Top of the Perch. I'm your host, as always, Nick Burt. Let's just get this out of the way. I'm not surprised by this result at all. This has been a house of horrors for Tottenham Hotspur, of course, in the feels like past 2, 3, 5 years. I don't even know the number anymore. It was, 2 years ago was the Stellini breakdown, where it was like 4 goals in 10 minutes. It may have been 15 or 20, but it felt like 10. Last year, I think it was just utter incompetence at the end of the season. This team just gave up. Thankfully, we are getting, this game out of the way early on this year. So there's that at least. But this was just a woeful game, it felt like, for Tottenham Hotspur, especially the first half. The first half was just utterly awful football. There's no other way to put it than it was awful. It was just difficult to watch. Newcastle, even though they weren't controlling possession on the counterattacks, they seemed like they were making every opportunity count. I mean, it was just point after point after point. They were just kept pushing this back line that was missing Mickey Van de Ven today. One player shouldn't make this big of a difference, but it really does, and that is just quite awful. It started very early on in this first half. I mean, Harvey Barnes, I believe in like the 9th minute, had a brilliant shot from just outside the box. It curls just wide of the post. We were kind of caught out early on, and it felt like, every time they ended up in the attacking third, Newcastle, it felt like, okay, this is going to be the one where the dam breaks, and it's all going south from here. Didn't go like that for a while, but I digress. We move on. 11th minute off of a corner. It's headed into the back of the net by Christian Romero, but I mean, he was clearly offsides by a mile. We didn't even need like a VAR review for that. He was offsides. We stay at 0-0. I thought, it was a brilliant header. I mean, that dude just always seems to be there on corner kicks. Like every opportunity he's going to get, he's going to try to take. 25th minute. It kind of felt like, hey, we may get an opportunity here. Popsar has a beautiful shot from outside of the box, and it was a screamer. Went straight at Nick Pope, though, so didn't even challenge him. That felt like it was truly the only really good opportunity for Tottenham in this first half. I mean, when we get into like the halftime stats, you'll see, possession-wise, stat-wise, all that stuff, Tottenham dominated this first half with those numbers. It's just it didn't pay out again because we have nobody that can finish. Both of our strikers are currently injured because one of them is made of glass. I don't know why we didn't move on from him this summer. And the other one, who knows? I don't know what to think of Solanke yet. He's played one game, and he got injured in that one game. We move on to 37th minute. It was a very quick throw-in from Newcastle that leads to just a cross to Barnes in the box, and he's wide open. Every defender just doesn't seem to care. Blasts it into the back of the net. It is 1-0 to Newcastle with just under 8 minutes to go in the first half. I mean, just some woeful defending once again. Harvey Barnes should not be that wide open in the box, but alas, here we are, and he was, and now Tottenham are down 1-0 going into the half. And like I said, we're going to get to these halftime stats right now. Tottenham, other than, the stat that matters, which is goals, they dominated this. 8 total shots, 2 on target. They didn't, the expected goals wasn't there, but passes, accurate passes. They had the least amount of fouls. least amount of yellow cards. They were equal on corners. So Tottenham had any opportunity to go ahead in this game. And they just didn't, because they don't have anybody that can finish on this team. I don't know what has happened this summer that made them think, we're good. We're going to roll with what we got. And yes, I know we brought in Solanke. Again, I don't know what to think about him because he's played in one game. So that it is what it is. I thought that this was a woeful first half, despite what the stats say. Thought Tottenham looked awful. They looked just out of place in this game. Now, I will say that changed as we went into the second half. Tottenham just were on the pressure. It seemed like every single moment of this half, except a few moments. But, I mean, coming out of the break, Postecoglou made a change. He brought in, it was Brendan Johnson. He doesn't get the start today, but he does come on at halftime for Popsar, who was on a yellow card. It ends up being Odebert has the first really good opportunity in the 53rd minute. A cross from Johnson ends in the box, far side of the post. Odebert is right there. He kicks it into the crowd instead of into the back of the net. It was a great opportunity for him to get his first goal at Tottenham Hotspur. It does not end that way. We move on to the 56th minute. It was a corner build-up that it was there, but it wasn't. It kind of felt like a lackluster build-up. It ends up with a cross in the box going off of Pope. Johnson is right there for the rebound. He deflects it in the area of the net. Didn't look like it was going in, but Dan Burn kicks it straight into the back of the net, and it is now 1-1 off that Dan Burn own goal. And it felt like that goal was coming, not, in an own goal type of way, but Tottenham find themselves level at St. James Park. Like I said, a place that has just been absolute, horror show for them in the past few years. And they looked like they were chasing for a go-ahead goal. It never came. It never did. The few times that Newcastle got on the counterattack in the second half, they basically almost made it count each time. I mean, there was one in the 66th minute. Jacob Murphy ends up with the ball. A beautiful ball from Gordon ends up with Murphy, and he takes a great shot that forces, of course, Vicario into a major save. We move on to the 72nd minute. Brendan Johnson had a good opportunity to get across to Son, who would have had a wide open net. That's deflected by Bruno Guimaraes. That goes out for a corner. That, of course, doesn't amount to anything because not many corners amount to anything anymore for Tottenham Hotspur. And now it did feel like as this half went on, like that 2-1 goal for Newcastle off a counterattack, where it's probably going to be like Isak on the counterattack, just sliding it past Vicario to give him a 2-1 lead. It's going to be, we know it's coming and it's going to be awful. Well, 78th minute, a complete breakaway. Udogie loses his man, which was Jacob Murphy. Ends up with Isak, who had a wide open net, puts it in the back of the net, and it is 2-1 Newcastle. Again, like I said, I was not shocked by this at all. I think a lot of people saw this coming, especially the goal in the second half with the way it was being played. Tottenham controlling possession throughout the second half. And it's a counterattacking opportunity. Leads to them scoring. And Tottenham drop the points in this one as it ends a 2-1 final. Yeah, it's definitely interesting, to say the least, these first three games. Like, it doesn't feel like... It feels like we should be in a much better position than we are right now. Currently, we sit on 4 points instead of what feels like it should be a 9. Tottenham have had over 30 shots, I think, total in their 2 road games this season so far. Of course, the Leicester game to open up the season and this one. They have a total of 1 combined point from those games. That is just absolutely despicable. That there's no reason that should be the stat line. It's absolutely disgusting that that's the stat line, but there's no finishers on this team. Today, I think Dragic didn't have a terrible game, but this team looks completely different when Van de Ven is and isn't on the field, and it's very apparent that he makes quite a lot of difference. And why we didn't bring in, a backup left center back, it's a great question, and I don't know why we didn't. It is still so funny to me that we didn't. And the Postecoglou gave the reasoning, well, we don't want to block the pathway for Vucevic. I don't know how to pronounce it. The Croatian kid that we signed we technically signed him in January. He technically can't come over until he's 18, which means he won't be over at Tottenham until next summer. And we don't want to block the pathway for him to get into the first team when he comes over. Why are we planning for the future right now? Well, I mean, we have some great academy players, but we're still bringing in other talent, blocking their pathway to the first team. I mean, what are we doing here? I think of like a Mikey Moore or Will Lancashire. I mean, we brought in Odebert. We brought in Solanke. We're blocking their pathway. I mean, just say you didn't want to spend the money and leave it at that. We literally most likely knew Van de Ven was injured on Saturday in the Everton game. Now, they said it's a different injury from the one at the end of the first half, was one he picked up at the end of the game. You still knew he was injured. And guess what? Transfer window was still open at that time. But guess what we did? We just sat on our hands and said, we're not going to do anything. We're good. We're trying to get players out. And, we did get players out. But you got to bring players in. I don't know. Feels like it's already going to be a long season. And we're only 3 games into it. I sure hope that things kind of get better from here. I don't think they will, though. I really don't. Today, I feel like was like truly the first game where I shouldn't be doing this, but it's truly the first game where I'm starting to question this whole Postecoglou thing, because he does not change his tactics whatsoever. And, sometimes, hey, that's a good thing. You got to stand on your ground. But sometimes you just look like a complete idiot not doing anything. That Newcastle second goal, we saw coming from a mile away. You couldn't adjust the tactics whatsoever. I mean, you saw that the back line was struggling today. Do you adjust whatsoever? No, we're going to let it fly. And look what it got you. It got you 0 points. So, I don't know. Glad we're already at an international break, to be honest. Yep. Final stats for the day. Tottenham, once again, it was domination, except they couldn't score because they don't have a finisher. 20 total shots, with 6 of them being on target. One, that's a poor conversion rate, first of all. Second of all, that's just disgusting. That's a stat. It's disgusting. I think this also showed, you don't have to be, Postecoglou does constantly on the press in games. Eddie Howe is a very good manager. They had 34% possession today. They only passed 261 times, and only 183 of those were completed. You just have to know when you can score. and go on that counterattack and make sure you have a finisher that can finish and put the ball in the net. You don't need all this fancy build-up play that Tottenham seem to be doing. Yes, I somewhat enjoy it, but then once it's not yielding results, it's like, fix something. So, yeah, it was a day at St. James Park. It could have been a lot worse, it feels like, but Tottenham still walk away pointless in a 2-1 loss. So let's take a look at the player ratings, of course, as we always do. Of course, like I said, it was Van de Ven out today, so that meant Dragusin was in. Made a few more changes. Like I said, Brendan Johnson ends up being sent to the bench, which moved Kulusevski up to the attacking 3 up front, and it moved Sarr into the midfield, who came off the bench for today. Son, I mean, he earns a 7.0, but I feel like I didn't really see him today. You asked me what he did today, I probably couldn't give you one good opportunity, so probably should have been a lot lower, but he earns a 7.0. Dejan Kulusevski, another player, he had his moments today, but they weren't good moments, and he earns a 6.6 in this one. He was more seen than Son, but he also made more mistakes in this game, which made it more noticeable, and yeah, not great. Wilson Odegaard, one of the few shining lights on today's game, I think. You know, he kind of didn't have the greatest of first halves, but for the time he played in the second half, I thought he played really well. He still seems to be getting his form in with this Tottenham team. I mean, he was only brought in like a week and a half ago, and I think he's only going to get better from here. But obviously, today was just a struggle all around, but I thought he was one of the bright spots. Looked like quite the player out there. Still trying to make plays. I mean, that shot that could have gone in would have been brilliant, but of course, it just goes wide of the net. We get into the midfield. James Maddison kind of regressed in form today, earns a 6.9. I just kept constantly losing his man. It felt like he wasn't doing a ton on the attack. Not a great day whatsoever for him. Bissouma earns a 7.2. I thought he did play a big influence on the first goal, him kind of losing his man. Little bit more on the second goal, but I don't really blame him for that. I think Postecoglou should have made a sub before then, but he didn't. He waited until the 82nd minute once again, and yeah, that yields bad results usually. So Bissouma earns a 7.2. Sarr got subbed off at half. I mean, it was kind of an average half for him, so he earns a 6.8. I didn't think it was, like, there wasn't truly influential moments either way, so it just ends up a 6.8. Udogie got completely burned on the second goal as he was, diving to the ground in the box. He a bluster of a day, earns a 6.1. Romero earns a 6.8. I didn't think it was the best day for him either. It really was a quite awful day for most of these players out there today. Romero, he did have the header, which I thought was good. Obviously, it didn't count, so it doesn't really matter in the end. Dragusin, I thought coming off, not playing at all. I don't think he's played a minute this season. This is his first minutes of the year. Listen, he's not Van de Ven. I still think he's a good defender. I think he made a few key stops. It's just he's exactly that. He is somebody to come off the bench. I don't think he's a constant starter. He didn't look like the Radu Dragusin we saw for Romania at the Euro. Pedro Porro, kind of a bluster of a day for him. He had a few moments where it just looked awful for him. He ends up earning a 6.8. And Vicario, yeah, he faced some shots today, but he just wasn't good. And I saw this point made on Twitter after the game. I don't remember who said it, but I saw them say And it made me think about it for a minute, and I'm kind of like, I'm starting to lean into that boat a little bit. Now, I hate to do this comparison because of the team it is, but the tweet said Vicario should be our Ramsdale. We can stick with him for, 2 or 3 years, but if another good player comes on the market, we should go after him. And of course, speaking of, the other team in North London, Woolwich Arsenal, as they brought in Ramsdale for 2 to 3 seasons that got things back on track there. And then last summer, they brought in David Raya, who, of course, Tottenham were also in for. That just kind of fell apart. And they have now moved on from Ramsdale as he fully moved on, I believe, now, as it was a loan with obligation to buy to Southampton. We look at the subs for today. Brendan Johnson came on at half. Somewhat had the goal. Wasn't really his goal, though, given that it was an own goal. He ends up earning man of the match just because I thought he was the best of what was out there today. He ends up earning a 7.4. Timo Werner still doesn't know how to do much. And that's quite worrying. I don't know why we got him on loan. I'm sure we're going to trigger that buy option for some reason and waste more money. I don't know. Bentancur and Burval got subbed on in the 82nd minute, so they don't end up getting a score here. Postecoglou earns a 6. I thought the timing of the subs was awful. There should have been subs in the midfield way before the 82nd minute, but of course he waits until then after we're already down to make changes, and here we are. So given that, we have reached the international break. Yes, we are 3 games into the season and have reached an international break. Like I said, I'm not truly complaining that we're here, but it kind of does stop any process that it feels like we've had. We haven't had much, but it does seem like we have hit that point. So coming back from that international break, guess what? It's a North London derby at home. Sunday, I believe it is. I'm fully expecting to lose that one too, honestly. And then coming after that is a Carabao Cup third round tie. That draw happened this week. We will be traveling to Coventry, to the Community Bank Arena or whatever it's called. Shocking. Tottenham got an away draw and a cup tie. Stunning. And then another draw that happened this week was, of course, the Europa League phase draw. Now, of course, there's no more group stage, so it's just 8 home, 8 away games. It starts off at home against Karabag, the Azerbaijani side, of course, and then you head to Budapest, Hungary, to face off against Ferencváros. Then it's back at home against AZ Alkmaar, and I believe we hit an international break again before it's on the road to Istanbul against Galatasaray. And then you have Roma at home. And then you get through the festive fixtures. And then you go once again on the road to Hoffenheim before closing against Elfsberg at home at the end of January. So a lot of cup ties are coming ahead. A lot of Premier League ties coming ahead. This is going to just be a disaster of a schedule. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Top of the Perch. If you just stumbled across this video, click like, click subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. We do this same thing for every Tottenham game, so there's most likely going to be more pain the rest of the year. So if you just love extracting all that pain, make sure you tune in and subscribe. So for now, that will be it for this one. We will see you back after the international break and for a North London derby recap here on Top of the Perch.